Hey, everybody, it's Dana with CoachDanaInspires.com, and we are so excited that you are here today. And we have a fantastic guest, Dez Thornton, and we are going to have a wonderful interview. But I want to just let you know that we do this every Tuesday. And if you don't know me, I am a coach for women entrepreneurs. I help women find their value. How much are they worth? Which is way more than we think we are. And then I help them find their perfect fit client. And we all go out and we change the world. So that's me, just in case you don't know me. And it's not about me today. It's about Dez Thornton. So here's Dez. Thank you, Dez, for being here. How are you doing?
I am doing fabulous, Dana. Thank you so much for the invite. You know that you are one of my favorite people, and so I'm so excited that we get together on this forum.
Oh, well, we have a mutual admiration society, absolutely. And I think our brick walls are saying hello to each other.
Yes.
Yes, we are
We are
brick
definitely in
brother
sync.
and sister.
That's right.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you're doing fine. Your family's doing fine. Everybody's okay.
Yes, everybody's doing fine, and that is a lot to say these days, but I am happy that my family is doing well. I appreciate you asking, and just excited that things seem to be getting back to some sense of normalcy.
Yeah, yes. And people used to say, "Oh, the new normal," and I kind of like the term "the new reality" because I'm
Yeah,
not really clear what normal was anyway. If you know what I'm saying, Des. Uh,
absolutely.
so, you talk to business people, business owners, entrepreneurs, people who work for big companies all the time. What are you hearing from them? Are you hearing positive things? Are you feeling like they're being optimistic or still kind of afraid? What do you think?
Yeah, I think the shift has finally happened. When the pandemic first set in, a close friend of mine asked me, when do you think we'll get back to normal? And I said, I think we'll be back to normal when I'm standing in front of an audience and there's live people actually in front of me. And that happened last week with an attorney firm. And so they were all excited to have someone who outside of the firm to come in. I was excited to be there. So everything that I'm hearing from business circles is sort of a cautious optimism, but people are definitely moving forward, and I'm super excited about that.
Excellent. That's so good. And I'm hearing the same thing, and more opportunities for speaking live. They're just opening up all over the place. So I think that's very encouraging, just for us as not just speakers, but as business owners and for attendees of these conferences. Zoom's been a blessing, but now let's get back to being
Yeah,
with
we
peeps.
got the face
Yeah.
to face social creatures, right? We gotta see each other.
I think so. I think so. So we're going to be talking about communication, public and professional thinking.
Yeah.
So I think that's such an interesting topic. So as entrepreneurs, as business owners, even people who work for large or small corporations or companies, what can we do today, right now? What can we do to really start moving forward now that we're a year plus into this thing?
Yeah, I think, Dana, that we've all had a chance to sort of reflect and now reset. And hopefully during that down period that we had, folks were boning up on their messages or on their expertise and been in the lab. And so now it's time to get out there and show the world what you got. Or if it's the same thing, show it to them again. Either way, we're excited to get out here and to get things going again, get moving again.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know I am. There. So we're going to talk about communication here today, and communication is so important in business, in your personal life, in social settings. Good grief. One wrong look, one wrong move, people kind of go, "Oh, what does that mean?" So,
Right.
what's the biggest obstacle to successful communication?
Yeah, Daniel. Well, I think the thing about public speaking just generally is it demonstrates self-confidence to whomever may be listening to you. And it also demonstrates poise. And those are two things that are huge, when it comes to executive presence. Now, where I see most people trip up and the biggest obstacle to communication, I believe, is the curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge simply says that once you know something, it's hard to imagine what it's like not to know it. And so in my work with clients, as you mentioned, people in the health profession, in the business world, and even some athletes, the thing that I find most often is people have a unique perspective, whether it's a general thing, whether it's some type of fact, that they know, or even if they have technical expertise. And what essentially happens is they start their messaging here and their audience is here and they go forward, but that gap is never closed. And so I think the biggest obstacle people run into is trying to close that comprehension gap.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've heard over the years, talk to your audience at at an 8th grade level or something. Is that overstating it? Or, I mean, is there another way of putting it so it doesn't make our audiences sound stupid?
Yes. So I have heard that before. I think the sentiment there is just to make sure that you bring, your expertise down to a level where people can access it and actually receive what it is that you're saying. But I would kind of flip that on its head a little bit and say, instead of talking to your audience as if they're 8th graders, what I do and what I coach others to do who are giving big presentations, talk to your audience before the presentation. Find out who these people are. Find out how much these people know about what it is you're going to be talking about. What that'll do is allow you to sort of gauge their education level. And 2 things that I always encourage clients to look out for is, what does your audience currently believe about what you're going to be talking about?
Oh.
And then how are they behaving as a result of that belief? And generally, if you can answer those 2 questions, it will inform you as to how much your audience actually knows, and it will help you in terms of closing that gap to make sure that you are clear and that you connect with the folks that you're speaking to.
Yeah. And I think, again, over the years, know your audience, your audience. And that seems kind of trite and, well, duh, of course, but it's not that duh. So many people.
I love that.
So many
I like
people.
that phrase. I'm going to adopt it's not that duh. I'm going with that.
Okay. And you can use that anytime you want. Absolutely. Or as Britney Spears says, it's not rocket surgery. So we can good old Britney, go Britney Spears. I'm sorry, any Britney Spears fans that are out there watching us today.
Yeah, you're
I'm sure there's a bundle of them. But yeah, knowing your audience, and because I don't think our audiences are stupid, but they may not know what you're talking about, some of these, intricate details, or people who use acronyms. I'm in an organization that loves acronyms. There are all these letters, letters, all these letters after your name. Well, most of the people don't know what those mean.
Yes.
And so when you say, oh, this letter here is so important, and you're going, I don't know why. Why should I try? Why should I strive for that? So
yes.
I think get a little idea of what they know about what you're going to talk about. That's and it seems so basic, but I love that. Know your audience, really super good. So when have you ever been in a situation? Let me just ask this question: have you ever been in a situation where you've finished your presentation, and you feel like you've really rocked it out of the park, and you've gotten some good vibes back from your audience, which you love so much about live. But then you at the end, and you're talking to people afterwards, and you get the same question over and over again about, so what did you mean by, or what did that acronym mean? I didn't understand that statement. And then do you ever kind of go, oh,
yeah. So Dana, there was a time where I had those duh moments. I'm certainly not above that right now, but I've sort of worked into my process over the years through all the errors that I've made. I've worked into my process, sort of this system where I can really get a good feel for the people that I'm going to be talking to. And so one of the things that I do personally, and I also advise my clients to do, is when you're creating your presentation, think about it from the standpoint of a retention report. So here's what I mean by that. So just imagine that after your presentation, if you're speaking in a board environment or if you're speaking to a large audience, it really doesn't matter. But when that presentation is over and people are leaving and walking out of the door, imagine someone handing them a white sheet of paper and they say, hey, write down the 3 most important things that Dana covered, right? That is the true measure of how successful a presentation is. Most people stand in front of an audience and they try to survive the presentation, and they think if they don't pass out and if the audience happens to learn a little bit of something, then it's cause for celebration. But I encourage folks to raise the bar. And what that does, going back to this idea of retention, if you create it with that in mind, then what it does is it forces clarity throughout, forces simplicity throughout, getting back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier. And it goes to the point where it eliminates, in most cases, that curse of knowledge.
I love it. Yeah. And I think people really appreciate that, because why are we sitting here for 30, 45 minutes or an hour listening to you if I'm not going to walk away with something that I've learned?
Absolutely.
And I think that's a good point. That when all of our viewers out there, if you're going to be making a presentation, I think this is something we need to be thinking about, is the retention. What are they going to remember as they walk out the door?
Absolutely.
That's powerful for all of us. So let's remember that. Viewers, that's worth the price of admission right there. So y'all, whatever you paid to be here today, you got your money's worth.
Hey, Dana, and really quickly, so the opposite side of that, and the way that was sort of born really quickly, is I heard a speaker who was very well known, and she said that one day she was in the restroom. It was 5 years after she gave a presentation, and a woman came up to her and said, "Oh, hey, you're the woman who talked about such and such," and she just had such a clever hook to what she was talking about. Now, that is the epitome of retention. That's where you want to be, where you see your folks 5 years later and they still remember what
Absolutely. I'm going to write that down. I'm going for 5 years. 5 years.
I'm still trying to get there too, so I'm on the train with you.
Let's work on that. Wow, that's super good. That's good stuff. So we were talking about communications skills, and I think that this is very important. But you want to share with our viewers about what the difference is between public thinking and public speaking.
Yes.
Tell us the difference, because I love this idea.
Okay, so the first thing I'll do is give you an example that sort of led to this concept. So what I was seeing repeatedly in my work is I would go in and meet a new client. It could be someone I met for the very first time in their office environment. We shake hands, we have a conversation, and I'm just, of course, assessing how this person is communicating the entire time. And what happens many times is I notice that the person is charming, they're engaging, they can keep a line of thought going. But you put that same person on a stage, or if you sit 3 people in front of them, you end up with a whole different person here. And I'm like, what happened? Why magically did you go from this charismatic, smooth Billy D. Williams person to now, this other person that's in front of me? How did that happen? So what I've learned over time of watching hours of different videos of people present is folks were not necessarily getting caught up on the words that were coming out of their mouth. Instead, it was the thought that preceded those words that came out of their mouth. So that gave me an inkling to say, hey, if I can deal with the thought, if I can help you think better, then in effect, I can make you a better public speaker. Because the thing that we all fear is standing up in front of an audience and going blank and then embarrassing ourselves and suffering the reputational harm that goes with that.
Yeah.
And so I sort of think of myself, instead of a speech coach, as a thought partner. And so my goal in my work is to be able to help my clients think on their feet so that they can pull up the right words in the right way when it matters most. And I'll end just with this quick example, or I don't know if this is an analogy or a metaphor, you can choose, but it's similar to going to find a file on your laptop.
Right.
So think of that file as the thought that you're trying to pull up when you're standing on stage in front of that audience. Most of us know, I got to go to this folder and then I got to drill down here and it's right there, right? Well, if we could do that same thing in our brains with the information that we want to spit out, then what that would do in effect is make us more authentic when we stand up in front of an audience, because the focus is not on ourselves and trying to survive, but instead it's on trying to impart that information to your audience, to connect with them. So as you said, they can take that information and do something with it when the presentation is over.
Yeah, I like that, because I think so many times I've seen presenters try so hard to memorize what they're, they've written it down or they've typed it out, whoever you are. And now here they are. They want to read it and read it and read it. And then they practice this. Oh,
Right. And then, hey, Dana, and then somebody sneezes in the middle of the presentation and they forget everything, right? It's like, I didn't practice that sneeze. I didn't know that was going to happen. So so people put themselves in an impossible position when it comes to that. I always give the example. It's just like, walking on a tightrope that's laying on the ground. It's like, of course, all of us can do that. But when it comes to presenting and that tightrope is 20, 30, 50 feet in the air, then it's a whole nother, ball game. And so again, my goal in my work is to make sure that my clients are prepared to think on their feet.
Right. And one thing that I do when I speak is, since I sprinkle stories in amongst my points, even if I forget that point and that story, and I happen to get over to this story, 99% of the time I can say, and here's another example, or let me tell you about this time, and go back to that story and point. And you're the only one that knows you got out of order. Nobody else knows, unless you go, oh, I forgot something. Oh,
that's right. You don't want to advertise your mistakes. It sounds like is what you're saying. I tell my clients that all the time. If you make a mistake in front of an audience, keep it between you and yourself. You don't have to share it with them.
keep it quiet there. So I just think if you, and again, the stories, for me, I know the stories because there's something that's happened to me. So since I know the story, I can certainly, remember the story, remember the point that goes with it, and that kind of keeps it flowing for me. And there's been plenty of times that I've left out that point in that story and had to absolutely. And here's another, you just have to circle around and go for it. And
absolutely. And the thing that I've done, Dana, to sort of bait people into this whole idea of public thinking. So in most of my presentations, I ask my audience a question, and the question is, if you found out today or at this moment that you had to go out and speak to 10,000 people, I ask how many of you that would make you a little bit nervous, and almost everyone raises their hand to that. And then I go on to say, well, what if you found out the only thing you had to do in front of that audience was recite your ABCs? How many of you, your anxiety would go down significantly? About 100% of hands go up, right? That anxiety goes down. So then ask the question, well, what's the reason for that? Why did your anxiety go down dramatically when you found out what you had to do? And it's because, of course, my ABCs are instinctive. I've known them my whole entire life. There's no thought that has to happen there. So I use that seed of a point to tell folks that if we could expand on that concept and you felt that same way about your expertise, just imagine how much more powerful, impactful, and compelling you could be in front of an audience.
I think that's a really good point. If you know your subject and you know what you want to share, the fear factor goes down.
Absolutely.
And the stress goes down.
Yeah. The thing that I find is most people are, experts, that they know their content. So that's not the issue. The thing is being able to pull it up at the exact moment that they need it. That's the biggest challenge that they run into. So some of the models that I have created allow my clients to have an image in their mind, sort of a map, if you will. And so they know where all of those ideas are positioned. And so as they move around in their mind, they move around the map model, they're secure in knowing where their points are located, and they could pull them up quickly, similar to what we talked about earlier with the computer file.
Right. And I do think about my brain as files. Let me go back to that file. It's in there someplace. let me think. And I just picture these little file folders. That's how I see my brain. Sorry, that's kids.
That's good.
That's an insight that you didn't need to know. Okay, so what's the number one characteristic of a successful speaker? What would you say?
I would say hands down the number one trait of a successful speaker, is authenticity. And that's easier said than done. Firstly, usually when people are standing up in front of an audience, they feel some type of pressure to put on their speaker hat. And so their voice changes and their personality leaves and everything else. And when I first got into the speaking profession 10, 12, 13 years ago, you know, one of the things that my mentor told me is, he's like, you're going to have to learn how to be yourself on stage. And he said, you're going to go in a complete circle and you'll come back around to yourself. And I thought, you know, that's kind of weird, but he couldn't have been more right in terms of what actually happened, because along the way, of course, you know, you see other speakers and you see things that they do that you like, that you think will work, and you try those things out, your own version of those things. You know, some of those things you keep, some of those things you toss. But when it comes to, you know, being a speaker, I think that the most important thing is connecting with your audience, because if you don't make that connection, then nothing happens. And as human beings, I think that we sort of have a sixth sense for phony. And I certainly believe that most people would rather listen to an authentic speaker who needs to bone up a little bit on their platform skills, as opposed to someone who is extremely polished, but you can smell the phony, right?
Yeah.
It's like, give me that authentic person every time. And so it's really, really important that, you know, you be in touch with yourself. And if you're just starting on this journey, or even if you're a seasoned professional like yourself or me, you've been around for a long time, I think the thing that I love the most about speaking and communicating is, you know, you never reach perfection. It's like you're always in pursuit of that perfect presentation. There's never a time that I've spoken, and the thousands of times probably that I've spoken, where I said, you know what? I said everything I wanted to say exactly the way I want to say it. That never happens. It's always a, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna do it again. And that's been happening to me now for over a decade.
Yeah. I think I'm so happy you said that, because I thought I was the only one who never got it right. You know, like, what happened? What happened?
But the beauty is they never know. The audience never knows.
And that is, if you can keep that to yourself, as we talked about earlier, just keep that mistake to yourself. No one really needs to know that. And if you forget something really, really big, like the CEO of the company, you know, Bob Smith, you know, wants you all to know, well, you know what? You could add that to the end. And oh, by the way, it's okay. It really is okay. One time, you know, I was giving a speech to the Public Defenders Association, who knew, of Wyoming, and you know, I like to have some slides, but the slides were just pictures. You know, there was no words on the slides, just pictures. And so I got towards the end, and I really wanted to thank them for being part of our judicial system that is really important, you know, and that you have to have passion to do that. So I had pictures of you know, I had flowers for some things, and I had question marks for a Q&A, or uhs and ums. I mean, you know, there was all just, you know, kind of basic, lots of corny stuff, and they laughed, believe it or not. And so I really wanted to talk to them about their passion. And so passion, if you Google passion pictures, these are not appropriate pictures to use. So I put a picture of a passion fruit up there, and I said, well, you know, I just want to thank you all for your passion. Blink, and here comes this picture of this passion fruit. And I said, oh yeah, that's as clean as I could get. And they busted up laughing. And afterwards, that was one of the biggest comments was, thank you for making this funny and informational all at the same time. And we love the passion part, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, be a passion fruit.
Yes, Dana, that's one of the many things that I admire about you. Is just your sense of humor, your energy, and how engaging you are. From the time that you and I first met, you've been consistent in that way. And what you do personally and individually, that translates very well on stage. I've had the privilege to see you speak before, and that is the place where everyone needs to be comfortable in your own skin and being willing to, you know, really quickly, then I'll share this point with you. So it's important that you're performing and not acting when you're in front of your audience.
Yeah.
And that's a clear distinction that needs to be made. But I always tell my clients, like, I don't want you to act, because if you're acting, you're being someone you're not. But if you're performing, you're just pushing yourself out a little bit further, being a little bit bigger in terms of your personality. And that's exactly what we need on stage. And it just takes practice and repetition for you to find out and get comfortable with who that person is. But I, like you, I'm sure it's like, as soon as the camera comes on, or as soon as I step on stage, you know where that zone is that you have to to, you know, after doing it for so many years.
Yeah. And I knew I had somebody, I was very close to them, and whenever they gave a presentation, they would suddenly talk like this.
Yes.
And here is what I want to tell you. Well, if that's your natural tone, that's different. But
Right.
and I do know a friend who that is his natural tone, and he's fabulous to listen to.
Right.
Shout out to Bill Brown. But
Right.
but then there's
Goes
other
back to
people,
authenticity.
they just put this weird voice on, and you're like, who is that?
I call that the game show host. I'm like, don't bring the game show host here. Leave the game show host at home.
Yeah.
and
Oh dear.
yeah, and in practice, Dana, just I guess another word for your guests who are listening here is videotape yourself, as you're practicing, and watch yourself on video, because no coach or anyone else can help you more so than watching yourself on video. And I know it's not an easy thing to do, but to me, that's the quickest way for you to see growth, as a speaker or as a presenter.
And I think that's 100% correct. And I get people all the time who I speak to, and I say, videotape yourself. I don't like watching myself. Okay, right. So you don't like watching yourself, but you're forcing all those people to look at you.
Exactly.
That seems rude. And they're kind of like, okay, I get the picture. So I think that's so true. If you're making them look at you, then maybe you should look at you.
Look at yourself. I like that.
I think it's fair. I think that's fair. So, our time is up. How can we be up? This is like insanity. We could go on forever. You're fabulous, Des. I just adore you. I love you. The things you have so much knowledge, and you're so enthusiastic to share your knowledge. And I really want to thank you for that. And I'm sure our viewers might want to be interested in finding out how to get a hold of Des. And I will use my technical skills here, ta-da, at work. And so here's Des. Here's his phone number, and here's his email address. So Dez Thornton, and it's Dez at DezThornton.com. Here's the phone number. Reach out to Des. Find out how he can help you give those presentations that will rock your audience's world. He's fabulous. He's been a coach of mine, and you and I are working on something which I shall divulge later on, and I'm very excited about it. He's so fabulous to work with. So Des, we want everyone to reach out to you, and I hope you're overwhelmed with folks wanting to get some tips and tricks from you. And anyone out there wants some help, some questions about these interviews, you want to talk about coaching, that's my information down there. So reach out to me. I'm more than happy to talk to you. And Des, until we speak again, just thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge.
Well, then it was an absolute pleasure. I appreciate the invitation. And as I said in the opening, you're one of my favorite people. I'll do it anytime. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And again, you're the best. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday on Business Inspiration.